G'day guys and welcome to this In Bounce, where today I will be talking through one of my favorite players, my boy Jordan Ridley, here on the spot. So here we are. We've spoken about Carl Amon. I know some people have been really interested in my boy Jordan Ridley, who, of course, as a Bomber supporter, I have said that he is a viable selection, especially because we got Big Ben McKay over to the club, who will be taking the number one defensive spot there at the Bombers. And Jordan Ridley, will dive straight into him. Jordan Ridley, he is a very good boy. He's a handsome man. Look at him, smiling, very polite, good family, and he's a great player. He's 25 years old. We've got him here as a key defender, but he plays his best as an interceptor. He certainly loves to intercept. He isn't someone who, as you can see by the stats here, is predicated on his one-on-one ability. He can certainly play it because I genuinely believe he's one of the best defenders in the league. However, his forte is in being able to take an intercept mark or gain an intercept possession at ground level and use beautiful beautiful disposal efficiency, whether it is by hand or by foot, to get the ball out of the back line. He certainly had an astronomical rise to his career. Really wasn't known by many people outside of the four walls of the club. When he first made his way in, he really just had an astronomical jump of almost 40 points to his Supercoach average to win our best and fairest. So he's certainly come a long way, and you can see in the last. He's now got a track record. The last 4 years, he's had a very decent average of around 100 mark. Now, we are back to our trusty site, DFS Australia. Thank you very much, Morts, where we will be doing a lot of the breakdown for Jordan Ridley and what it means for him moving forward, what we can predict. Because the hypothesis is that when he's allowed to intercept and take a lot of marks, he'll get a lot of points. However, if he has to play key defensive roles, he will struggle because you can't take intercept marks or a lot of marks in general when you're playing key defense. Your job is to man up on your direct opponent and prevent them from kicking goals. So we're looking for games where Jordan Ridley was off the mark, was off the chain, allowed to take his marks and allowed to play a bit more freely in the games this year. And they start from here, 2023, round one. Now, also, there is a caveat when you look at the overall average for Jordan Ridley for the year. It's got here that his average was 94.9. Now, I take that with a pinch of salt. Why do I say that? Because there were games where he was subbed off prematurely. So first thing that comes to mind, now you can tell if someone's been subbed off without even having watched the games. Of course, it's not definitive, but it's more than likely when you're looking at the stats and you look at the time on ground statistic percentage, when all of a sudden, among all these numbers, a 36 pops up amongst all these other statistics. So these other percentages. 36%, he was subbed out before halftime, and I can tell you it was against Port Adelaide. It was that game where Willie Rioli Jr. Concussed him, knocked him out, and with a flimsy defense, he went into me. I could not believe that his legal team actually used that advice that he bumped me, not the other way around. Like, get out of here. So this was a concussion where he was subbed off and had to miss the next game. As you can see, he doesn't play in round 9. He goes from 8 to 10. So this game I would not count as part of the averages, to be fair, because it's not fair on him that he's been concussed by a flog, and all of a sudden his average now has to suffer as a result. So I wouldn't count that in his average. And then where else has a slightly lower time on ground? As you can see, look, this 52% against the Crows. He was subbed out essentially at halftime. So he played half a game and he scored 80 points. Right? So we're not going to include that. That's not, again, we're not going to include it. And he actually was subbed out here against the Bulldogs. This is where he suffered. It was in this game where he suffered his quad injury and he missed the rest of the season. However, this was almost 3/4 of the game. He played over 2/3. So we'll leave that in there. So in roughly 15 games, he had an average of 101. Okay. So in roughly 15 games, it's not exactly 15 games because he's had a bit of a sub out, but 101 as opposed to what was put down as a 90, let's say 95. So due to things outside of his control, he's had a little bit of a hit of 6% of 6 points to his average, which is a very decent average for someone who plays as an intercept marker, whilst also having to sacrifice that role a bit to cover for BZT, who, as the statistics will tell you, was the dead last defensive one-on-one key defender in the competition last year. He had the most goals kicked on him all season. So, Jordan Ridley, we look at his points, and we wanted to see, where are his marks? Where is this guy taking marks? We know he's taking kick-ins, as we can see here. And kick-ins are obviously a major part of being a half-backer. And Jordan Ridley, I know it says here that he is by far and away second after Mason Redman, but you got to take into account that there were games such as this one where he was concussed, went out early, missed the next game, whereas Mason Redman got 10 in that game. You can't forget that he was subbed out early against the Crows, and then he doesn't play any game for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of the season, where Mason Redman pulls out another 6, 9, 14 kickouts. So that's already 24 kickouts just from those games alone, where Jordan Ridley was not there to participate. So I'd certainly, of course, he's not going to have a monopoly on kick-ins. That is always shared, and that's probably one of the downsides with Jordan Ridley playing for Essendon. We have too many players that take kickouts. It's not like Luke Ryan, for example, who has a monopoly on kickouts over there at Fremantle. Having a monopoly on kickouts means you have a higher floor for your points. Now, let's have a look again at Jordan Ridley, and we'll see. Now, there are games where he's had to play accountable defense due to the way that opposition teams have set up. Now, it's mainly against the teams that have two genuine key forwards. Now, we'll start with the Hawks. They didn't really have much of a forward line that is very potent. And we can see that he had 107 Supercoach points for that game. He even went and got a goal out of it. Now, I remember I went to watch that game, and the ball hardly went down there. I remember watching the game. I'm like, oh my God, George Rids is so bored. He actually pushed forward to kick a goal. His first goal. He was that bored. He just needed to get involved. So for him to score 107 in really what was a thumping game, he won by 80-odd points, that is a very good showing, I would say. Now, 70 points against the Gold Coast Suns. What happened here? He had 13 kicks, 5 handballs, and this is the one thing that you will always see with Jordan Ridley. He is such, as I mentioned right off the top, he is a beautiful user of the football. He doesn't need a lot of it to get maximum value from those disposals because he is so clean. The thing that we would love to see from Jordan Ridley is more marks and more disposals, because when he gets those disposals, it's not like these other players like Tim Taranto comes to mind, who is an absolute butcher, who needs many disposals in order to get some high points. Ridley isn't like that. He will make full use of every disposal that comes his way. So in this game, we won by 28 points against the Gold Coast Suns. And you look at the way they're set up. They had two big key forwards, Ben King and Levi Casbolt. They were the two big boys over there for the Gold Coast Suns. And so they're not small. They're actually genuinely big people. And when we come here, I've got the AFL website already loaded to go, and we'll use all of the resources, or as many of the resources as we can use, to piece together and understand why Ridley's scoring was as it was. Now, in the statistics, you can toggle, and I have sort of gone and toggled already. When you come to here, you can filter for a bunch of other statistics. Now, I have already gone to the contested defensive one-on-ones, the intercept marks, and marks in general. Now, we're looking here, and we're seeing in terms of the defensive one-on-ones in the back line, Sam Collins at the most, but we don't really care about that. We really just want to see for the Bombers how defensively we were set up. So Zert Thatcher had the most, and he lost 3 out of the 4. And then Mason Redmond had 2. He held his own. Laverty had 2, and he lost both of them as well. So it wasn't a great showing by our key position, our key defenders in this game. Ridley wasn't switched on. Okay, so Ridley didn't have to play accountable defense in that game. Still had 2 intercept marks. Now that's you would expect that. Someone is not tussling and fighting for a one-on-one contest. You'd expect them to come across and float in and take and help out their fellow defender to take an intercept mark. So he's managed 2 intercept marks, which is great, as well as having 5 marks in general. And the thing with Ridley is that he'll always have a great kick to handball ratio, 13 kicks to 5 handballs. And with that disposal efficiency, you know it's going to be good. However, he had 2 clangers in this game. So those are probably the 2 things that would have been 100% if not for these 2 clangers. And as we know, a clanger is -4, as you would have noticed in the Carl Amon video. If you haven't had a look at that, go ahead and watch that, where I did the exact same thing for Carl Amon. So he's had 2 clangers, so he's lost 8 points from this game, which means let's get that off. Please don't demonetize us. Please don't flag us. Which means that in this game, Jordan Ridley, where is he? Rids. Lost 8 points. They would have been on 78, which again isn't the best. But part of what makes Ridley a good player in real life, but also a little bit frustrating to own as a Supercoach player, is that he is very cool. He is a cool cucumber. Here's how he's able to stand up in really high pressure situations, which the Essendon backline always finds itself under. However, that cool, calm nature also extends to his personality. He's happy to play a role for the team without necessarily starring. So as long as he can play his role, do his bit for the team, he's not a me type of player. He's not like a Dacos, for example. He's very happy to share the load with others, and that's probably the one thing I would imagine that's holding him back from really pumping up ridiculous, monstrous scores on a regular basis. So that was this game, where he did well. He had played a decent game. He had 6 kick-ins, but he just did what he had to do in this game. Against the Saints, he scored a 96, which is really good considering that in this game, it was actually quite wet. Now, how do I know that it was quite wet? Obviously, I watched that game. But for those who don't watch these teams, who don't barrack for them, obviously, why would you watch? If you're not an Essendon supporter or a St Kilda supporter, why would you watch Essendon versus St Kilda? A simple way to do it is, now I mentioned that our trusty phone, the AFL app on your phone, gives you different things that the website, that the browser doesn't give you. And one of them is, if you scroll a bit under on the home page of the summary page on the app, you'll get the match info, which is the round, the date, time, location, as well as a little snippet of what the weather's going to be like. Now, it was wet. It was raining in that game. And as we know, when it's wet and slippery, the ball is harder to grab and it's much harder to keep your feet. So you would expect in that sort of condition, in those sort of conditions, an intercept marker, it might not be necessarily to their favor. However, he was still able to rack up 14 marks in that game with 3 tackles, 21 disposals. So again, I would be really pleased with that result because that's what he is. Now, he didn't have to play very accountable in that game because at this point of the season, St Kilda had next to no forward line. They were absolutely decimated with injury, and so he didn't have to play his one-on-one defensive style. We then moved to the Giants. He only scored 88 in this game. Why is that? Well, he had the 3 kick-ins. As you can tell from these, I don't even have to show you the heat map, but I'll do it anyway. It's all predominantly going to be in the back 50 because that's what he is. He is a fullback. He is a defensively minded player. I'm just going to save you the time and not click through those ones. We come to the Giants game, and the Giants game, it was a tough slog. It wasn't an easy win. Managed to get his 7 marks. Again, sensational kick to handball ratio. He is a kicker, not the cleanest at 86%, but let's go into it a little bit more. What was the forward line setup like? They were rocking with Harry Himmelberg in the forward line now he didn't kick very well, but Jesse Hogan was in the side. So they were playing a 2 key forward setup with Himmelberg and him. So we'll go to this game, open it in a new tab. We can probably close this one now. And here we are. We won by 13 points. We're playing under the roof at Marvel Stadium. Here it is. Let's go to the player stats. Let's go to my stats where I filtered it. We want to go to the Bombers, contested one-on-ones, and we see that Redmond had the most with Laverty. Zoe Thatcher had 1, Stringer had 1, Ridley had 1, and he lost that one. So that's not a very good. He had an off day. Only 85% disposal efficiency with no clanger. So probably a lot of some ineffective kicks, which didn't result in turnovers. However, as we know, the Giants are a very good team. It was a very scrappy game that I can recall because I remember watching that game. Obviously, I'm a diehard Bomber fan. Again, a good kick to handball ratio. He had 7 marks. So the thing with Ridley is, and 2 intercept marks of his own as well. So the thing we know with Ridley is, and the way Essendon have historically played in the past, is if Ridley can take an intercept mark, it's great. If he isn't the one, he's always presenting as an option on the switch, or he'll run by. That's something that he introduced into his game recently this year. He's happy to kick the ball and then run a bit further up to present as an option. So hopefully we can see a bit more of that moving forward into the coming season. All right. He's had 78 there. So again, not an 88 there. So 88 is a decent score. Again, he just did what he needed to do. Against Melbourne, that was a really wet game playing over there at Gather Round. That was a torrential day. For those of you who remember Gather Round, we were the curtain raiser as in Melbourne, and then the Port Melbourne game, and then the Port game in the evening was just drenched. So for him to score 91 again in torrential rain as an intercept defender is sensational. Against Collingwood are a really tough team to match up on because they don't have your classic tools. They are very mobile forward line that does an amazing job in spreading the love with the goals, and you can see who's kicking the goals. You got Dacos, who plays up the ground. DeGoey plays in the midfield more. McCreary's a genuine small. Ash Johnson, a key forward. Ginnivan's a small. So if we actually were to go to this game, and let's have a look and see, because it was a wide spread of goal kickers, and Collingwood, they won the flag for a reason, right? They were the best team in it all year. So if we come here, again, we go to my stats, contested defensive one-on-ones. We want only the Bombers. BZT, Ridley, and as you can see, there were only 4. There were only 4 contested defensive one-on-one matchups for a game where they kicked 13 goals, 12 behinds, only 4 contests. That just goes to show that Collingwood got well and truly on top in the midfield battle, were able to serve kicks inside 50 on a silver platter on the lead to open players. And when you're in that sort of situation, good luck trying to intercept mark. And as you can see, with these defenders, not many people took intercept marks. Redmond had 2 as a defender, and Ridley had 1. So it was a really tough day to be an Essendon defender on that day. Just to Collingwood, I hate you guys with a passion. But yeah, 82, Geelong 78. This is one of the key examples that come to my mind when I think of BZT getting absolutely ragdolled, unfortunately, and Jordan Ridley having to swap the play onto them. You got Tom Hawkins, who gave him an absolute bath. Originally, Ridley, I think, was manning up on Jeremy Cameron, but Tom Hawkins was just... He kicked 8 goals. He kicked 8 goals. So something had to be done, and we've had to mix and change a whole bunch in the back line. And for us to still come out only losing by 28 points is decent. But these are the types of games that we've brought Ben McKay in for. It's exactly for this reason, so that we don't have to witness a massacre like that. Poor Sir Thatcher. He had 6 defensive 1-1. He lost 3 of them. The others were brought to ground, or he was supported. But it was rough. Rids had the 1. But when you've got that sort of supply coming in directly to a powerhouse like the Tomahawk, it was all stations on deck, really. So Jordan really managed to get his 2 intercept marks, which is good, as well as 4 marks in general in the back line. But yeah, so I'd imagine that we're not going to see more of that sort of massacre. Again, this was a concussion game. Richmond, they really don't have... if we just look at their team, no disrespect to Richmond, of course. I brag for Essendon. We haven't achieved really anything. But when we look at their goal scorers, there wasn't really anyone big and dangerous to threaten the goals. So Jordan Ridley had an absolute field day, picking everything off. And you can see he had 14 marks on that day with 32 disposals. So he had free reign. And that's the thing. If you give him free reign and there isn't, again, West Coast, apart from Oscar Allen, really wasn't anyone to trouble. And when you only have one target, it becomes very clear where it's going to go. And when there is a discrepancy in midfield, I suppose, strength, when you're the weaker midfield, you're bombing the ball inside 50 as opposed to hitting up targets. So it becomes very easy for a player of Ridley's caliber to dominate. Against North Melbourne, it was a tough game. Nick Larkey is a very strong player, and obviously will be I think he'll. There should be no doubt that I think he'll be a Coleman medalist one day. But it was a tight, close game, and we look at the goals kicked. And Zurha had 4. Zurha is also a really tough matchup. He's that awkward, I suppose, Kyle Langford-sized player, but with a bit more muscle on him. So he's really tough to beat, capable of taking a mark, and quite explosive. CCJ also was actually getting games, and CCJ is not a small player. Callum Coleman-Jones, he is actually quite tall. He's 2 meters tall, so he does demand someone big. And for our already naturally undersized backline, we were stretched. And kudos to North Melbourne for doing that. So Ridley really, I suppose, had to stretch his skin beyond belief. And for him to score 102 is still quite decent. Against Carlton are no easy slouches in their forward line with their twin towers, McKay and Kerno. So for him to score 108 is great. Against Freo, they don't really have any key damaging players, so he's able to take his marks without much issue. Against Port Adelaide in this game, it was that wet, tragic game where we lost after the siren. It was pouring down. I couldn't believe it. The respect that I had for the boys after that game, because it really was a slog. And for Port Adelaide to get that lead in the last quarter with all that rain coming down, it looked like it was impossible for them to come back. But we did, alas, bloody Dan Houston. That was a ripper kick after the siren to break our hearts. And we can look at it here if we come here. It was a tough day for the defenders if we just come down in general. I mean, Dan Houston got immense scaling for that goal, but he also, if we look at his heat map, he also played in the middle of the ground. He wasn't just playing off halfback. He definitely had a lot of aggressive positioning, which helped him be part of the play. He had 32 disposals, if you don't mind. But if we look at the other defenders, really weren't that great in terms of their scoring. I mean, Alira Lear had 83. He was their premier defender back there. Again, you just look really nothing to sing home about. Coming across to the Bombers, BZT only had the 45, which is obviously very bad. Who else was a defender? Jake Kelly only had 63. McGrath only had 73. Heppel had 75. So it was just a bad day in general for the defenders in that game, which makes sense considering the conditions. So I would take that with a pinch of salt as well. We come to the Adelaide game where he was subbed up for half time. Geelong, once again, Geelong is our worst matchup when we come to their forward structure as opposed to our backline. And it was a rough game, as you can see. Not one of our players that game cracked the ton. Ridley was second highest scorer for our side, for our team. He gave away 2 frees against, which probably makes sense considering the number of inside 50s. Eventually, you get withered down. The damn walls broke and it was rough. Who kicked the goals? Of course, Tom Hawkins kicked 5 goals. So he loves to play against us, and our backline always capitulates against them. So all that being said, what does that mean? It means that Jordan Ridley is not one without risk. It means that Jordan Ridley is a cool cucumber who's capable of many things. Capable of scoring high 90s to 100. Capable of, when he's not being subbed out, and is able to play the full or close to a full game, he is capable of reaching some tremendous heights. 130 here, a 137 here, a 138 here, and an 80 at halftime. You know what I mean? So he is capable of great things. However, when he has to play accountable defense and he's not taking intercept marks, that is a problem. So where do we hope that Jordan Ridley becomes a genuine option moving forward? It comes to Ben McKay. We need Ben McKay for Ridley to be a genuine selection. We need Ben McKay to do his job and to not be beat in his one-on-one contests. We need this guy to really hold his own. So we'll go and we'll flip it to North Melbourne and we'll see the games where he's played. Okay. So North Melbourne, 2023. He starts in round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. So he plays every game from round 5. So we know we're not going to waste our time going with the first 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. We get to round 5 against Brisbane. Tough ask against the best forward line in the competition. They lost by 75 points. How does he do? In his first game back, mind you. Sorry, on player stats. In his first game back, we wanted to see the Kangaroos. My stats. Contested defensive one-on-ones. Ben McKay really had none of them. Excellent. Wow, that's a bit anticlimactic. I should have looked at that beforehand. No defensive one-on-ones. Probably they were that destroyed that there was no contest. Okay, let's have a look at the Suns. See how it does against the Suns. We want player stats. And so this is how I do my research, as you can see live. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't tell you what you want to see, but you got to look anyway. Ben McKay had 2 defensive one-on-ones. He lost once. However, he managed to take 2 intercept marks. Okay. So he basically went at 50% there against the Suns. Against Melbourne, they lost by 90 points. Again, a lot of what a defender can do is linked up directly to the strength of their midfield and the defensive pressure that this midfield can apply. If the opposition midfield is able to waltz out of the middle and hit targets, it's going to be ridiculously tough. Ben McKay against Melbourne had 3 defensive one-on-ones, 1 loss, 3 intercept marks, 7 marks in general. That's okay. Again, that's decent. As long as he can hold his own in his defensive efforts, then it should free up Ridley, because Ben McKay is a big boy. And that's part of the reason why we got him. Ben McKay. 104 kilos. That's a big boy. That's not exactly what I want to know. 2.02 meters. There you go. 2.02 meters. So he's a big man with agility, who should hopefully be taking the number 1 key forward for the opposition, which should hopefully release Jordan Ridley to do what we know and love about him, which is his intercept marking. And when he takes a lot of marks, you can see that he's going to get a lot of points. Because if you look at the games, 14 marks, get 138 here. He had 10 marks here, 137. 14 marks here, 122. 14 marks, 96. Okay, so this must be a game where he had a few clangers, I think. 86% efficiency. This doesn't tell us. Now, I did look it up on Footy Wire, and it did show that he had some clangers in this game. But on average, if you look, when he's able to take 10 marks, at least 10 marks in a game, he's averaging 123. Now, I know it's only 4 games. It's a small sample size. It's, I can totally understand if you don't want to trust in it, but that's what I've seen so far. I've seen that he's capable of these 4 big scores. He's had 4 120s, and a lot of them come when he can take his intercept marks. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, is my spotlight, my analysis, my looking into Jordan Ridley, who I love with a passion. Let me know in the comments down below if you're going to go with him, if you're going to see that price point, say, you know what, there is value there if the stars align. If Ben McKay can have a full preseason, Jordan Ridley has a full preseason, we can see that the 2 main defenders, by the looks of things, are going to be McKay and Zach Reid. Zach Reid's training very closely with Ben McKay, doing everything in lockstep. If Ridley is the 3rd that can come across and intercept, then Ridley, for his price, is an absolute bargain, because he's capable of averaging high, well and truly over 100. Well and truly over 100 he's capable of averaging. And his average of 94, I'd say, is a little bit selling him short, considering his injury and being subbed out of the game. So I do think there is value in Jordan Ridley. I don't think he will let you down. I think he's too good of a player to let you down. However, is he going to be a top 6 defender? Again, it depends. It's a massive watch this space. I do believe he's capable of being a top 6 defender if he's playing the intercept role. If he's not, and he's the 2nd defender, for example, then I'd say that he's more likely to be top 10 in terms of the defense. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you like what you've seen here today. This was for the Carl Amon one, I was probably a bit more prepared and had things all open. But with this one, Jordan Ridley, I came in here completely, or just about completely unprepared, so that you can see live, step by step, what I'm doing with my analysis Last one was a bit too streamlined. You might think it's a bit unrealistic. This is basically how I go into every single player. Let me know in the comments below any other player that you would like me to go through. I am happy to go through all of your requests and let you know, give you my verdict. You would have seen Carl Amon, you would have seen this one. Look forward to the next one. If you like what you saw, drop us a like and subscribe if you're new. Will be greatly appreciated. Make sure you hit that notification bell to keep track of all of the videos that we are pumping out this preseason and season proper when it starts. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.